Hello, shameless writers. I come to you in all of my makeup-free glory to talk to you a little bit about Christian fiction. If you're over the age of 5, no doubt you've heard the stereotypes regarding all manner of Christian art, whether it's books, whether it's movies, whether it's music. Somehow, the popular idea is that just because a work of art is Christian, somehow that makes it less good. Somehow that makes it cheesy. Somehow that makes it not worth your money. Now, of course, we all know that this is nonsense, as evidenced by the massive success of the Left Behind series and basically every single Christian movie that comes out. They always do very well at the box office, despite the sneering of the mainstream media and the basic ignoring of it by mainstream movie critics. They always do really well. And yet the reputation remains. Why is this? Well, I wouldn't be the nonsense-free editor if I didn't tell you why. The reason for the reputation is because I'm afraid, in some instances, it's true, as evidenced by one of my most recent editing clients. Reading the work of this editing client, which should have been a slam dunk, easy-to-write book about a grieving widower, turned into what was basically a treatise on all of the things new Christian authors in particular tend to do wrong when it comes to composing their stories. So for those of you who like to read Christian fiction and maybe you're seeing the same errors that I am, or for those of you who aspire to be Christian authors, I thought I'd compile a list of the 5 most common mistakes specifically Christian authors make when creating their books. Number 1, writing the message but forgetting the plot. The cardinal sin of the book I'm currently editing is that the writer very much wanted to illustrate the goodness of Christ and how much abiding by his word and living as a good Christian should will not only improve your own life, but also the lives of those around you. This is an outstanding message. This is a great theme, and it's usually a common theme among Christian works. You'll notice I said it's a good theme. It's not a plot, good or bad. It's not a plot at all. So if you just show your main character going throughout their daily life, speaking to people, hearing about their problems, having things happen to them, we can all read the dialogue, which is often heavy-handed. We understand what you're trying to say. It's just boring. Nothing is happening to this character. This character is not making any decisions. It's just conversation after conversation about things that went wrong, and then suddenly, through the goodness of the Lord, everything was made better. That's a blog post. It's not a book. There are many books that are written with a message in mind, whether that's Christianity or whether it's another religion or whether it's a social issue of some kind. There is nothing wrong with writing a work of fiction that has a strong message, aka theme, that you are trying to communicate. But here's the thing. You have to communicate it through a plot. So when you're constructing your scene list of your work of fiction, ask yourself, what purpose does this scene accomplish? Am I learning more about the character? Am I becoming more invested in their life journey? Does it move the plot forward? Is there a mystery being presented? What is the purpose of this scene? And if, for the life of you, you can't figure it out, or you say, well, the purpose of this scene, just like every other scene, is to show how good the Lord is, it seems you've forgotten to include a plot. Number 2, being afraid to give your characters flaws. I am a big fan of Andrew Klavan. For those of you who are fans of the Daily Wire like I am, you'll have noted that Andrew Klavan, who is a novelist and a former Hollywood screenwriter, came to Christ late in life. And as a fervent believer, he loves all things Christianity. I believe he's an Episcopalian specifically. But as a writer and a Christian, he is often asked, what don't you like about Christian writing? And it's the same thing that I don't like, where you have these perfect, sweet, Melanie from Gone with the Wind type of characters who live in the perfect light of Christ and share that with the flawed people they come across. That's all well and good, except 1, no one is like that, Christian or otherwise. 2, when we read about people like that, instinctively, we as humans rebel against that kind of nonsense. We don't like goody two-shoes, we don't want to hang out with goody two-shoes, and we're certainly not going to sit there and root for them. Because screw you, I have problems in my life. Why don't you have problems in yours? I don't want to hear a word of advice from you because clearly you live in a glass bubble. Yuck. Conversely, you have the opposite problem when it comes to supporting characters. In addition to the main character being little Mr. or Miss Perfect, then you have these supporting characters who are preposterously evil human beings, just mustache twirling, nonsense driveling non-humans. I mean, nobody acts like this. For instance, in the book that I'm editing, this woman just shows up at a funeral home to seduce the undertaker. Why? After only meeting him one time, does she do this? We don't know. She just does because she's a hussy. We don't know anything about this woman, and there's no logical reason why she would have chosen this person to try to seduce. Who shows up at the funeral home wearing a black cocktail dress for like literally no reason? Nobody. That's who. She was just trying to demonstrate the virtue of the main character of the book. And oh, no, it doesn't matter what you're dressed like. I am a virtuous man. Well, that's great, but this whole scene is nonsense. Nobody behaves like that. And if I had a choice, I would not have continued reading this book. People are flawed, even people with good character. You can be a lifelong Christian and still fall into, let's say, habitual gambling. Or maybe you're having feelings towards someone who's not your spouse. This isn't to say that every single person in the book needs to be flawed to the point where they're not sympathetic anymore. That's not what I'm saying. All of your characters need to have a flaw. Maybe they're selfish. Maybe they're just lazy and they don't notice when others need help. There's so many flaws that good, well-meaning people have. Make sure that all of your characters, particularly your main character, have something. After all, if they don't have a flaw to work on and something to make a journey towards, then what is your book doing in terms of character development? If they start off perfect, then why do we need the book? Number 3, focusing on apologism. I have nothing but good things to say about Christian apologetics. I think it's a well-worthy task to not just profess your faith, but explain it and defend it as well. And honestly, it's kind of a skill that I wish I had more of. As a Catholic, we don't really do a lot of apologetics. We don't even really read scripture ourselves. We just sit at Mass, we listen to the Mass, and then we have, biblical sections read to us from week to week. And I'll be honest, I kind of envy the way evangelicals can just go right to scripture. They have that scripture and they're ready to examine why this scripture might maybe contradict this scripture over here. Oh, well, this was the author of this one and this was the author of this one, and here's the reason why they disagree. I love that and I envy that, but it does not necessarily belong in your work of fiction. The thing you need to know about apologism is that the person who picked up your book did not pick it up to be convinced of the existence of Jesus or that he was the Son of God. They picked up your book because of the plot that was explained on the back cover blurb. 9 times out of 10, the reader is already a believer. That's why they were in the Christian fiction section. But on that 10th time, if they're not already a believer, chances are they might be very tentative in their faith. Is this something that's for me? And so what they're looking for is life. If they were looking for an apologetics book, they would have picked up C.S. Lewis. They're looking for people living lives, doing things in a Christian way. And like the saying goes, you will know them by their works. The best way to convince people that Christians are good people is to be a good person just out in the world, not to stop random strangers and say, "Excuse me, let me tell you all about Christianity and why I'm better than you." No one likes that, as the 90s clearly showed us. What they do like is seeing good people making mostly good decisions, even though they themselves are flawed, and recognizing when they make a mistake and making changes in their lives if needed to become even better. Let your characters show their faith through their actions, not through standing on a soapbox and giving long speeches. And certainly not through narrative intrusion, which is probably one of my biggest pet peeves. Number 4, passive characters. Character passivity is actually a problem found in all genres, especially with new authors. They write their plot and all of these things happen to the character. But your main character isn't actually doing anything. They're just existing and misfortune is raining down upon them. They're not making any decisions. They're not taking decisive action to get themselves out of the trouble that they're in or to accomplish some quest. They're just hanging out, living life, and bad things are befalling them or the people around them. What makes Christian fiction especially bad about this is because we as people of faith believe that God is invested in living a good life and worshiping him and letting others know him by our actions. And so we believe that God or Jesus, or maybe even the saints and angels, invest in our lives and maybe sometimes even actively intervene in times of tragedy or in struggle. And sometimes people of faith tend to let this belief in intervention do the work for them. And it does not fly. It doesn't fly in secular works when we call it Deus ex machina, God and the machine. And it definitely doesn't fly in Christian works. Yes, we believe in God. Yes, we believe in his son, Jesus Christ. And yes, we believe that the Trinity is invested in our well-being and our growth as a spiritual person so that we may join him in heaven in the afterlife. But don't let your book just be a person standing there being good while wickedness rains down upon them and they just passively resist. Okay, God's going to come and save me. And then lo and behold, there's a Red Sea moment. Okay, your character is not Moses. Unless he is. If you're writing a book about Moses, forget everything that I just, said. But if you're not writing about Moses, chances are God himself is not going to come down and save your character directly. So don't let your characters be passive. Have them make decisions. The inciting incident is often something that happens to your character, as it should be. But once that inciting incident happens, let your character be active. What decisions are they going to make to get out of the trouble that they're in or solve the mystery or whatever your plot is? Have them actively engage and have each scene contribute to that journey that they are actively participating in. Most of us will never experience a miracle in our lives, so chances are neither will your characters. And finally, number 5, fear of taking a stand. Now, I know this is kind of a weird thing, and you might not think that Christian authors suffer from this, but hear me out. Yes, you're writing a Christian book, and you're intending it for a Christian audience. But here's the thing. We all know that there are many types of Christians, and there might be a temptation, or I should say there is a temptation, for Christian authors to kind of blandify their beliefs. They might say to themselves, okay, well, I want to make sure that my characters are just bland, regular Christians. They're not the Seventh-day Adventist that I am. They're not the Eastern Orthodox Christian that I am. No. They're just regular Protestant. I'm not even going to name a denomination, and I'm not going to have any of my core beliefs in here. Even though this specific core belief of mine drove me to write this book and create the plot the way that I did and create the characters the way that I did, I'm going to kind of pull back on what my actual point is because I don't want to offend Christians who are not exactly in line with my doctrine. That's wrong, and let me tell you why. Like I said before, I was raised a Catholic. So as a Catholic, I do not believe in the pre-tribulation rapture. I just don't. Sorry. And I ascribe it, frankly, be mad if you want, I call it Protestant nonsense. It was invented in the 19th century. That I feel empowered to call it nonsense. Despite that belief and being very firm in it, I loved the Left Behind books. I loved them. I read all of them. I even saw those not awesome Kirk Cameron movie versions of them. They were not great. Okay, they weren't. But I still saw them and I loved them. I loved the books. I loved the characters. Do you know why? Because Tim LaHaye stood firm in his faith. And he said, you know what? This is what I believe. And he even backed it up in scripture. Still don't buy it. Catholic Bibles are a little bit different, irrelevant. The reason I love this, despite it standing in direct opposition to my religion's beliefs about the end times, is because Jerry Jenkins is a wonderful author. And he took Tim LaHaye's very well-researched theology and he crafted a marvelous plot out of it. He created realistic characters who were flawed in the beginning and continued to have little flaws with them as they continued upon the tribulation journey that they were on. Chloe was so insufferable. I'm sorry, she just was. They were good books, all of them, front to back. And the fact that the doctrine didn't really match up to my particular brand of Christianity did not dilute my enjoyment of them. As a matter of fact, it even heightened it. He did not water down his beliefs. He did not change his beliefs to satisfy other types of Christians, other types of believers, certainly not people who were non-believers. He addressed those criticisms in various forms, talking about same-sex couples, talking about people who were, quote, the wrong type of Christian or the wrong type of believer. He addressed all of that, but he stood firm in his faith. This is the way it's going to be. This is the requirement to make it through the tribulation. This is the requirement to get it through heaven. The fact that I didn't believe in all of it didn't matter. It was great. And I spent my hard-earned money on every last paperback that they released and the DVDs. Not proud of that one. So don't be afraid to stand firm in your faith. Even if it's not what society has to say, even if it's not what the majority of Christians have to say. Looking at you, Mormons. Your belief is partly what drove you to write the book, so include it in its full glory. Christian books are like every other type of book. Plot progression and character are key. There might be a temptation to ignore those because, hey, you're writing for other Christians and you think in your crazy head that they'll be nicer to you in the reviews even if they don't love your book. And you know what? You're probably right. They might give you a tepid 3-star review, even if they didn't like your book or even finish it. But that's not what you want. You want enthusiastic readers who just go through your book as quick as they possibly can and then voraciously hunt through Amazon looking for the next one. That's why you focus on plot, that's why you focus on character, and you let your faith shine through those things rather than preaching to your audience. If you liked this video, please give me a like, subscribe, and share online to let YouTube know you like what I'm doing over here. And for those of you who have already followed me, thank you very much. I am very honored that I think 125 of you have now deigned to grace me with your weekly presence. So until next week, take care and write well.